Hello, and welcome to Organizing Your Content in Canvas to promote student learning and save you time and work. This presentation is brought to you by Cindy and Kelly, your E-Team, with special appearances by Uncle Albert. Our agenda for today is why course design is important, the advantages of a well-designed course, the 10 components of an online course, 4 principles of online course design, Dr. L. D. Fink's approach to course design, my own approach to course design, and isn't that just a little bit conceited? And we won't be able to, of course, answer questions in this recording, but at the end I do have a list of additional resources. And along the way, we'll explore an example classroom. You will find this recording in a classroom that is designed for two purposes. One, to act as an example of a well-designed online classroom and as a home to the fully online version of this workshop. Uncle Albert says that everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. Unfortunately, it often appears a part of the human condition to complicate things much more than necessary. In e-learning, we have seen classrooms in which the student must read the instructions on one page in one module, then go to this other page in another module and watch a video, and then go to another internet site to read an essay, and then go to another page in a third module to complete an assignment that can only be uploaded in one format, but the upload link is not available due to an incorrect date setting because there were actually 4 versions of this same assignment and the correct date was set for the incorrect version. So not only does this poorly designed example that I just read to you make it very frustrating for the student, but as you can tell, it's also incredibly frustrating for the instructor because, as I said, they have 4 versions of the same assignment and accidentally updated the due date on the wrong version. Having a well-designed course helps the instructor just as much as it helps the student. And put your tongue back in your mouth, Al. Why is course design important? A well-designed online course supports student interaction with content, interaction with their fellow students, and interaction with the teachers. And student interaction supports student engagement. If a student can interact in their classroom, then they're more engaged, and student engagement promotes learning. A well-designed course is less confusing and frustrating for students and teachers. We often think that when we move a face-to-face course into the online environment, we're just changing it over from the traditional format to an online electronic format or digital, and we don't worry about it. And the truth of the matter is that online instruction is actually an entirely different process than our traditional face-to-face courses. And in an online course, it is often very difficult to separate instruction from course design. They are integral components of each other. In the traditional environment, we might lay out your lesson plans for the entire quarter in advance, or even just outline a plan and do most of our lesson plans the night before the lesson is to be delivered. And during the delivery of those lessons, your lecture and lab periods, you can remain flexible to accommodate student interruptions, change up the lecture or labs on the fly to reinforce a concept students are struggling with, even respond to student input and go completely off on a different or unrelated tangent. During your lectures and live lab times, you can remind students of coming attractions and due dates, reinforce policies and procedures, and interact with your students and let them interact with each other to build an online learning, to build a learning community. In the online environment, you have to do things differently. You have to design your online environment in advance, and your course must be designed to allow instruction to happen. Lectures and lab must be designed in advance to accommodate both your best and your worst learners, to anticipate those questions that may arise. If communications are to occur, then systems and tools must be put in place to permit them. If students are to interact, then systems must be put in place to support those interactions. And if a learning community is to develop and flourish, then the course must be designed to accommodate that. So instruction is a component of the design of an online course. Some of the advantages of a well designed course: improved student and faculty navigation. Remember the four like assignments? Yes. Improved accessibility, improved clarity and consistency, improved student engagement and interaction, expedited course creation, simplified course updates or revisions. And I want to add here too, um, improved student retention and completion. This has been proved in study after study over the last 20 years that a well designed course will retain students, and more of those retained students will successfully complete the course. And of course, a well designed online course is less frustrating, less confusing, there's less misdirection, and an instructor spends considerably less time responding to student inquiries about where to find things, what to do, and how to get them done. Clear and logical navigation is one of the keys to accessibility, and that's why this is listed as one of the advantages. Um, and it is a key to student success in general. Students should be able to find what needs to be done, find how it needs to be done, and find where it needs to be done. If they are still uncertain, then they need to be able to find where to get help, immediate help. All of these contribute to a more successful student. Um, And if you look at this list, notice how many of these advantages also work for the instructor. Uncle Albert says that I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. By designing a online course well, that is exactly what we're doing. We're providing our students with the conditions that they need in which they can learn. See, I told you Uncle Albert would be along for the ride. So let's look at the 10 foundational components of an online classroom. I'm not saying that it is absolutely necessary for every one of these components to be in every online course. However, I strongly think that they should be, and it, maybe not exactly in the form that you would traditionally think of. For example, with announcements, maybe you don't want to use the announcement content area in Canvas to house the announcements, and you would like to put them in a more prominent position on the course homepage or some other location. But some way of getting that information to every student immediately is a very important component of an online course. So, yes, announcements. Course information, how many credits the course is worth, whether it's hybrid or fully online, the required textbooks, the schedule of studies, your course policies and procedures, due dates, things like that. This is a terrible time to get hiccups, by the way. All of those things constitute course information, and that should be available to your students. Instructor information. They should know who you are, how to contact you, when to contact you, and equally important, how fastly you'll respond to them. All of that would be included in instructor information. A course should include course modules, and each module should include some kind of an introduction, the learning objectives for that module, any resources used during that module, a to-do list, and then all the content and activities for that module. And you can call your modules whatever you want. You can call them a module, you can call them a unit, you can call them chapters. We're going to see some examples a little later on in this slideshow, but they don't have to be called modules, but they should contain those minimum 5 components. Discussions. Online courses should have discussions. Discussions allow students to interact with each other and with their instructor, and also provide an opportunity for students to apply what they've learned. Submissions. By submissions, they mean an assignment area like a Dropbox where students can upload their completed work. Assessments, your quizzes, your test, any graded activity you're using to assess student achievement of the learning objectives, of course, need to be included in an online course. Grades, some form of a grade book or grade reporting tool. In Canvas, we have the grade book. Some communication tool. Canvas has 6 different communication tools available and the ability to integrate even more. Um, you don't have to use all 6. You don't have to use more than 6. You can get away with just one communication tool, but the most important thing is that you use a communication tool to communicate with your students. And finally, course support. There must be some information provided in every online classroom that tells students how they can get support with the course content, whatever subject you're teaching the course, and with the course delivery tool itself, the LMS, in our case, Canvas. Those are your 10 fundamental components of an online course. Here are the 4 principles of online course design, and I have to confess these are my principles. They're extracted from many years of literature and experience and quality matters standards. I, they're as good as any other principles of online course design, so we're going to go with them. Um, Consistency, modularization, navigation, and accessibility. And on the following slides, we're going to look at these a little closer. Principle 1, consistency, perhaps one of the most important of these 4 principles. By consistency, I mean consistent naming your modules consistently. If you call the first module Module 1, then every other module should be named likewise. Module 2, Module 3, Module 4. You shouldn't have one module that's named Module 1 and the next one's called Chapter 2 and the next one's called Unit 3 or any combination thereof. Consistent naming is an accessibility issue. It makes your course much easier to use for people who are using screen readers and other assistive devices, and it's very important for students with certain learning disabilities that things are consistently named. Consistent location, placement, and ordering. In other words, if in Module 1 you start with an introduction and then you have lectures and then you have handouts and miscellaneous resources and then you have assignments and then you have quizzes, then every module, those items should be placed in the same order. Again, this helps students who use screen readers, and it helps students with certain learning disabilities. When you look in the model classroom, you will see that consistent naming also applies to those content within the module. And I actually have called labeled things as Module 1 resources, Module 1 handouts, Module 1 quizzes, Module 1 assignments, etc. It's a small, tiny commitment to extra work and time building a classroom this way. And you're wondering, well, why should I say Module 1 assignments when they're in Module 1 and it's clearly the assignments? But when a student's scanning down a page with a screen reader and they're looking for the assignments in Module 4, this makes it much easier for them to find it. Consistent text, icons, and document formats. We should make our documents look the same and feel the same, be structured the same consistently throughout a course. If we choose Calibri 14 as our font, then we should use Calibri 14 throughout our classroom. Yes, we may sometimes turn a word blue or bold for emphasis or underline something, but it should always be Calibri 14. I picked Calibri because it's a sans serif font, and sans serif fonts are the most accessible. Next is consistent scheduling. Um, that this means if your first three modules are 1 week long, probably all of your modules should be 1 week long. I know this is not always possible because sometimes our quarters start on a Wednesday and end on a Thursday, etc. Those kinds of things interfere with that kind of scheduling. But if we offer an assignment due on Wednesday, a quiz due on Friday, and the module exam due on Monday, then we should try to adhere to that schedule as much as possible throughout the quarter, throughout all of the modules. Again, this isn't always possible. You may have term projects, midterm exams. These kinds of things are exceptional to a schedule, but everything that can be scheduled on the same day and of the week and due at the same time of the day, then we should do that. Our students should know that if this is Wednesday, this must be Paris. Consistency of design is also important at the program level, with all the component courses having, to the degree possible, a similar look, a similar structure, consistent naming, consistent locations, placements, and ordering, and consistent text, icon, and document formatting. It's amazing how much this helps students if every course they take in a program basically looks and acts and feels the exact same way. You will watch your students comfortably settle into a good, solid routine of learning when you set up a consistent program. Principle 2, modularization. Defined units, topics of study rather than like materials or activities. And your module should include some kind of introduction or overview, the module level learning objectives, all learning materials for that module's topics, your readings, your external links, your videos, etc. All learning activities related to that module's topics, your assignments, your discussions, your practice exercises, etc. And all of your assessments. And they should be organized as units of study rather than types of content. In other words, we should have chapter 1 module, chapter 2 module, or a module 1, module 2, or a week 1, or a week 3, week 5, a unit 1, 2, and 3, etc., rather than having a module that is called readings, and then another module that is called assignments, and another module that's called resources, and another module that's called assessments. All those do is make students hunt back and forth through all of these areas of your class trying to find the content that they need. Um, The point here is that when a student opens week 1 or chapter 2 or unit 4 module, then everything related to that module should be in there. I have yet to see a course level learning objective that reads something like this. Upon completion of this course, the student will be able to demonstrate the ability to search everywhere in and out of this online classroom to locate, identify, and complete the work necessary to achieve the other objectives of this course. In other words, we want our students to focus on the content of the course, not trying to figure out how we've used the learning management system. Even within a single unit of studies module, navigation can be further simplified if embedded instructions and related materials into our assignments and our discussions and our quizzes. So here's some examples. And this first one is a unit by unit. Unit 1, includes chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 8, and they cover topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, etc. And from unit 1, you proceed directly to unit 2. So when unit 1 is done, the student is done with that unit, other than if they want to go back and use some of the materials for references for further study. They're not leaving unit 1 to go in and do an assignment in an assignment module, or maybe read a handout in a handout module. They are completing unit 1, then they move to unit 2. The only place you would have exceptions for this are things like large projects, midterm exams, and the like. Here's another example. This one is module by module. Module 1, it has lectures, assignments, a quiz, an overview, and within each of those areas are videos, PowerPoint slides, resources, discussions, tasks, etc. And you can even divide in Canvas, you can divide a module into areas called overview, lecture, assignments, and module quiz using the text header content type. So Canvas is set up ideally for doing this. The example 3 here is week by week, week 1, week 2, week 3, and within each one you may cover more than one chapter or just one chapter. You've got all the components in there, everything they're going to do, that you've seen in all these other examples, the slides and the questions and the PDFs and the links and blah, 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 blah. Again, though, when they complete week 1, they move on to week 2, and week 1 is left behind. And finally, project by project, same thing. I think you can look over this example and see how this would work. And if you're in a project-oriented type, teach a project-oriented type of course, this lends itself very well to being designed in Canvas. So again, Uncle Albert says, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to find it when I need it. And that's the way our students feel. If they knew everything, they would not need to be in our courses at all. But what they do need to know while they are in our courses is where to find what they need to know and when they need it. Principle 3, navigation. According to Quality Matters, in an online course, navigation refers to the process of planning, recording, and controlling the movement of a learner from one place to another in the online course. This statement from Quality Matters clearly illustrates what I was saying at the start of this slideshow about instruction and course design being intimately connected in an online classroom. We are controlling the movement of our learner from one place to another in our online courses, and we're planning for controlling their movements. That's what navigation is all about. Your students need to be able to find out what they need to do, find where it needs to be done, find where it needs to be turned in, and consistently, back to principle one, consistency, consistently find these things out in the same places in the classroom throughout the term. Headings and labels should be clear and consistent. This help tell students where they're at, where they need to go, what they need to do. Hyperlinks should be descriptive of where they will take the student instead of saying click here, which really tells the student nothing. You should label your link with where they're going. For example, Clover Park homepage. When students click on that, they know they're going to the Clover Park homepage. You also want to avoid URLs. Sometimes a URL is very simple and probably descriptive enough for the average student. For example, with Clover Park's homepage, that's http cptc.edu. Fairly simple URL. But if you've spent any time on the web, you know that sometimes a URL can be a paragraph long and not really tell you a dang thing. So if you're sending your students to a video on a topic that you want them to watch, tell them where they're going. Um, you know, um, YouTube video. Let them know. Whenever possible, external web content should open within the online classroom. Leaving the online classroom can create confusion for inexperienced students and for disabled students, and it can often be hard for them to get back to where they came from. And I know it's not always possible, but when it is, outside web content should open with inside your classroom, and Canvas makes it really easy for this to happen. Very long documents that will require considerable scrolling should be avoided. It's simple enough. Break those into 2 or 3 documents. And at the bottom of the first page, put continued on the next page. And at the top of page 2, put continued from page 1 so that your students know that these are all part of a single larger document. Again, logical navigation. Avoid nesting content more than 2 layers deep in Canvas. That's all the deeper that you can nest content. In Angel, you could have put a folder in a folder in a folder in a folder 27 layers deep if you wanted to, and probably drive your students nuts. In Canvas, you can have a page in a module, and on that page you could have a link to something else, and that's 2 layers deep. So do use the modularization concepts previously talked about in Principle 2. Modules help make navigation consistent and logical. Principle 4, accessibility. An online course that is accessible to all users enhances the learning opportunities for all users. Losers, that's terrible. Freudian slip. An online course that is accessible to all users enhances the learning opportunities for all users, including those without disabilities. While we have no control over the accessibility of Canvas itself, we do have control over what we put in Canvas, where we put it, how we label it, and any other technologies or websites that we ask our students to use. So we have considerable control. And always keep in mind that accessibility does not just address those students with documented hearing and vision disabilities. The student who is legally deaf or legally blind. From perfect 20/20 vision to legally blind is an infinite range of vision possibilities for a human being. And your human being could be not legally blind, but say presbyopia of old age. They have difficulty reading a font that is smaller than 14 point. They have difficulty reading pages that have low contrast. They have difficulty reading certain colors. Too much glare gives them fatigue and makes them less able to study for long periods and less able to study effectively. So there's a huge range of possibilities in human ability. And when we design a course for all users benefit, including those with disability. Accessibility can be improved by adhering to the first three principles of consistency, modularization, and navigation, among some other things that we're going to talk about. Use accessible formatting and design semantics. Now, I never use a link to an external document as your instructions or your descriptions. Use a document that's built into Canvas. And in fact, if you're providing instructions or a description for an assignment, why not use the page editor within that assignment to include your instructions or your description? And in fact, the way Canvas is set up, you could embed a video that your students watch. You could paste in an essay that you want them to read, and then give them the instructions to the assignment all on the same page as the assignment itself. They don't have to go anywhere else. Assignment and assessment descriptions and instructions should be included with that assignment or assessment and not on a separate page. Links to external websites should open within the classroom whenever possible. I've already said this before. Be selective in your external tools to make sure that they meet accessibility requirements. We use lots of third-party technology throughout the campus, things like Perkins My Labs, Cengage Learning Solutions, Hawks for mathematics, etc. Those major tools, for the most part, are accessible. But if you have any doubts whatsoever, come by eLearning and ask us to evaluate, or talk to Hope Stout in Student Services and have her review the accessibility of a tool that you would like your students to use. And if you can't find an accessible tool, then don't use it. Use what you've got that is accessible. When adding media to your classroom, make sure that media is accessible. If you have a video, make sure that it is closed caption, has a transcript. Closed captioning is better than a transcript, but at least with a transcript, you're providing that information to your students. If you're uploading a picture, make sure that you include alternate text to that picture. Formatting and design semantics. I use that term at the start of this accessibility, and maybe a little explanations in order. Semantic means related meaning, or what an element looks like can convey meaning. A very obvious example of design semantics is a stop sign. And in fact, any national highway sign in America is designed to meet the needs of both disabled individuals and people for which English is a second language or not even a language at all. Everybody can recognize a stop sign by its shape and color, and they don't even need to be able to read the word stop on that sign. So a stop sign is design semantics. Semantics are important for accessibility because they convey meaning to all readers and provide consistency in design. Um, Things like using heading level text and bold font to one mark the start of a major content area and to give it emphasis. Having your text be a different color, using the same graphical image if it has alt text to it. All of these can be examples of design semantics. Some semantics tips: use headings and styles to convey importance. You have headings and style sheets available in PDF, you have them available in Word, and you have them available in the page editors within Canvas itself. It's very important to use headings, styles. When you use tables, use row and column labels and headers so that your students who are using assistive technology know that this is a heading, that this is the top of a column, that this is the start of a row, etc. Do not embed instructional text in graphics or images. A really common example is to have a little JPEG image that says start here. Unless start here is also alternate text on that image, it is totally meaningless to a student who is using a screen reader, because when the screen reader passes over that image, all it's going to tell the user is that it's a JPEG. It won't tell them start here or anything else. And I've seen faculty use much longer and more involved instructional text embedded into an image or graphic, and it simply does not work for people who don't have full vision. Do not embed links in images unless alt text is provided to identify the link and where it will take the student. A screen reader will identify that that image is a hyperlink, but unless you've labeled it in alt text, it won't tell the student where that link is going to take them. Use a high degree of contrast between the text and the background. And surprisingly, black text on a white background isn't the best. Actually, a soft tan or cream colored background, or even a very light gray with any dark color, is much preferred. There's a considerable amount of glare, especially on screens, computer screens, when you use a white background. Out of clutter, find simplicity. From discord, find harmony. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Uncle Albert says it right every time. Look for ways to make your classrooms as simple as possible. Remember that your students are there to learn biology or English composition. They're not there to learn Canvas navigation. So I've avoided throughout this thing talking about any past studies or the literature or the self-proclaimed experts in online learning on purpose. But I really like Dr. Fink. Dr. Fink has written a great book on designing for important learning. And she has been a speaker at every InstructureCon since Instructure started. And she has a very solid understanding of how to design online courses. And in fact, in the Canvas classroom that accompanies this, you'll find a 50-minute video in there, one of her presentations at InstructureCon. Be sure to watch it. It's a very good video. So she puts course design into 3 steps or phases. The initial design phase: build strong primary components. Identify important situational factors, and we're going to discuss situational factors in a second. Identify your important learning goals, your course objectives. Formulate appropriate feedback and assessment procedures. Select effective teaching and learning activities, and make sure the primary components are integrated. By integrated, she means aligned, so that your learning materials and your learning activities are aligned with your course objectives so that they help your students achieve the objectives. In the intermediate design phase, you assemble those components into a coherent whole. In other words, You make a classroom, okay? Um, you create the theme structure for the course, how you're going to organize it, but thematic structure, that simply means, am I going to organize this course around chapters of the textbook, units of study, some kind of module, mirror the 11-week structure of a community college course and label them week one, week two, etc. That's what she means. Essentially, she's talking about dividing up your content and your activities into the length of term so that it flows well for your students. Select or create your instructional strategy. Again, that's part of building that course so that it works within a quarter. Integrate the course structure and the instructional strategy to create an overall scheme of learning activities so that your course flows from day one to day, anyways, 11 weeks out and makes sense for the students. And in your final design phase, finish those remaining important tasks. Develop your grading system. Debug possible problems. Never deploy a classroom without going through it page by page by page, by link by link by link, and making sure everything works. Write the course syllabus. And I know a lot of us think that, a lot of us actually design our courses based on the syllabus. Start with the syllabus, then build a course around it. That is exactly the opposite way of doing it, and quite frankly, the wrong way of doing it. Your syllabus is intended to describe your course. It can't accurately describe your course unless the course is built. Now, I know that some of us have to teach with prescribed syllabi from our department or our program, but I would ignore that syllabi as much as possible until the end and go in and um, find finally adjust it so that it better fits your course. And then plan an evaluation of the course and of your teaching. And don't wait for the end of the quarter COLA. Um, um, at the end of the quarter, it's too late to make any changes in your course design to to help your course. You should at least run a mid-course evaluation, maybe a start of course evaluation, so that your students, you get some feedback from your students on how well you prepared them for the rest of the quarter. Um, I can't overstress the importance of student evaluation of your courses and even any form of an external evaluation of your course, because as teachers we tend to put blinders on when we build for ourselves and we don't notice obvious things. Now, Dr. D, for the most part, uses a backwards by design style of building a course. In other words, she comes up with the learning objectives first, what we expect our students to be able to do when they complete this course, and then how are we going to measure whether or not they've met those objectives, our assessment strategy. That's what's meant by backwards by design. And then, of course, you select your learning materials and your learning activities. So, for the most part, Dr. Fink follows that model, but she includes situational factors at the start of that model, even before she develops her learning objectives, and that has a lot of value. Situational factors includes things like how many students. I just this quarter tried to merge four sections of one course into one Canvas shell, wound up with 103 students, and found out that that particular situational factor did not work really well in an online classroom, primarily in the discussions, because only the first 10 to 20 students who posted actually had real active discussions, because after a week the discussion list in any the posting list in any discussion was 3 or 4 pages long and not manageable by the students or by me. So situational factors can have a huge impact. On what level is this course? Is it early? Is it an entry level? Is it an advanced course? How will it be delivered? Full online, hybrid, enhanced? This impacts how you're going to design the course. A web enhanced course doesn't need as much explanatory information as a fully online course does because you can answer those questions in person. What are any external learning expectations? What do we have to consider from the textbook, the college, for example, like core abilities, from industry with industry standards or certification and licensing requirements? These external learning expectations are situational factors that definitely impact the design of an online course. What is the nature of the subject? Is it theoretical and it's just going to be a lecture course? Is it practical and it's going to be primarily a lab course? Or is it a combination of both? What are the learner characteristics? What is age? Their life situations, any prior knowledge or experience? For example, teaching the second year of a 2-year program, your courses would be designed entirely different than the first two courses or the first quarter's courses of a 2-year program because in the second year your students have considerable prior knowledge and experience in the field that your program is teaching them. Your learning goals or expectations, your own characteristics, your values and beliefs, your attitude towards the subject, your own level of expertise, your own teaching strengths and weaknesses. So, these situational factors can have a huge impact on how you design your course and should. Attached here, you'll see or not attached here, but embedded here, you'll see a modified Fink alignment worksheet. I have this as a downloadable document in the Canvas classroom. It helps you make sure that your assessments, learning materials, and learning activities are all aligned with your course objectives. So, in other words, you want your learning materials and your learning activities to support the achievement of your course objectives, and you want your assessments in a classroom to measure the student's achievement of those learning objectives. And this worksheet will help you, set that up when you're designing your course. Um, Not only is this worksheet available in the Canvas classroom for this workshop, but Dr. Fink's video that explains how to use this worksheet is also available. So Uncle Albert says, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. And I put that slide in here because that's me. And in the next couple pages, I'm going to talk to you about how I design an online course. And every year I realize how much more I don't know. But I have been teaching online for a very long time, and I know that some things work very well, and they save me a lot of time and energy in the long run. They're very similar to Dr. Fink's, so I thought that I would share my system, and my own little worksheet is also included in our online course. I start with a plan. A well organized online course starts with a well organized plan. I start with my learning objectives, and that's because I've been teaching the same courses for the same college for a long time. And so my situational factors are set in concrete, so to speak. I know them very well. But anytime any of those situational factors change, then I put them into my planning process. So unless something changes, a new textbook or new program requirements or new program learning objectives, etc., I start with my learning outcomes. And I make sure they're objective and measurable, and I make sure that they include any national or local certification and licensing requirements, that they include any professional association outcomes, or any institutional outcomes like our CPTC core abilities. Then I determine my assessment strategy and I include student self assessment in there. Students need to be able to measure their own learning. I identify and select or create my digital learning materials that support the objectives, alignment. I identify the learning activities that will support the objectives, again, alignment. I develop a course outline, and in the Canvas classroom to support this workshop, I have created a form that you can use to develop a course outline to make sure that you are to help you design your course. I divide those materials and activities into my planned units of study. I map those units to the term length, including very specific dates, module start and stop dates, due dates for assignments, when assessments are going to be posted, when they're going to be due, the same with discussions, etc. I map all of that out in advance before I start building. I integrate my assessment strategy into that outline. And then I use that outline to develop my online classroom. I use it as a checklist for that class, and then I keep it and use it as a file for future use. In the example that I've provided in the classroom, it includes a column for notes, and I even put some sample notes in there, because things do change from quarter to quarter. For example, just something as simple as we do have the typical 11-week quarter. And that's fine when the first day of the first quarter is Monday and the last day of the last quarter is Friday. But it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes your 11-week quarter is really only a effective 10-week quarter. And then maybe you have it's fall quarter and the college is closed for 3 days for Thanksgiving, which really sucks a lot out. You can't call that an instructional week with 3 days gone. So I make notes like that. Maybe a new edition of the textbook has come out, etc. Situational factors. So I go in and I make little notes before I start the design. Or if I'm even just copying from quarter to quarter, I still use that checklist so that I make sure my dates are all correct and that any situational factors have been considered. And then I start building my course. And of course, I include those same remaining tasks. I develop a grading system and standards. I debug any identified problems. Links always break, so check them. I write the course syllabus, including a schedule of studies. I plan an evaluation, and as again, don't depend on or wait for a sale. I review the course one last time before deploying, and if possible, it's always better to have somebody else review a course for you if you can get it. Uh, Unfortunately, you can't always get it. But boy, if you've got a teaching partner or somebody, let them review your course. We all put on our little blinders, and you miss your own typos and everything else, or you use the Outlook calendar to put out your schedule of studies, and you didn't realize that Memorial Day was May 24th, and so you have your students turning in an exam on Memorial Day. So, good to have somebody else review the course. So, this is the slide that I used for questions in the face-to-face version of this workshop. Still, we'll quote Uncle Albert because he's a smart man. The important thing is to not stop questioning and including questioning your own ability to develop online courses. Curiosity has its own reason for existing, and that is so that we can continue to improve ourselves. Here are some additional resources, and there's more in the online classroom. A self-directed guide to designing courses for significant learning by Dr. Fink. Um, Great website. Go there. The Quality Matters rubric. Check it out. Improving the accessibility of your Canvas course. Again, check it out. And the National Center on Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is that principle that if we design a course for everybody, including disabled people, then that course helps everybody learn better, including disabled people. Universal design is a wonderful principle. And that is the end of this lecture. I